Everything you learned about the Maya disappearing into thin air is completely wrong. The truth behind one of history's greatest mysteries is way more shocking than the legend you've been told. And what really happened could actually teach us something terrifying about our own future. The Maya civilization didn't just vanish overnight like some magic trick. That's the story we've all heard in school, in documentaries, and even in movies. But here's the thing. Actual evidence from the ground tells a totally different story. Today we're going to break down what really happened during the so-called Mayan collapse. And I'm going to show you why the real story is actually more fascinating than the myth. We'll look at what the science says, what archaeologists have actually found, and why this matters way more than you think. So let's start with the big myth everyone believes. According to popular history, the Maya were this super-advanced civilization living in Central America. They built massive pyramids, created complex calendars, and developed sophisticated writing systems. Then suddenly, around 900 AD, they just disappeared. Cities were abandoned, temples were left to be swallowed by the jungle, and millions of people supposedly vanished without a trace. This is what almost every documentary and textbook tells you. It's dramatic, it's mysterious, and it makes for great television. But here's the problem with this story. It's mostly fiction. The Maya never actually disappeared. In fact, there are over 7 million Maya people alive today. They live in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. They speak Mayan languages, practice traditional customs, and maintain their cultural identity. So if the Maya are still here, what actually collapsed? Let's dig into what really went down. What we call the Mayan collapse was actually the fall of their political system in the southern lowlands. We're talking about places like Tikal, and Palenque, these massive city-states. Between 800 and 900 AD, these centers of power started falling apart. Kings stopped building monuments, writing stopped being carved into stone, and populations dropped dramatically. But this didn't happen everywhere at once. Some cities collapsed decades before others, and some areas stayed strong for centuries longer. The northern Maya cities actually thrived well into the 1500s. So what caused the southern cities to fail? For years, archaeologists came up with wild theories. Some said it was alien intervention, others claimed mysterious diseases, and some even suggested peasant revolts. But modern science has given us real answers based on actual evidence. And it turns out the collapse wasn't caused by one single thing. It was a perfect storm of problems hitting all at once. Let me break down each factor that scientists have confirmed. First up, climate change, but not the kind you're thinking of. Scientists drilled into lake beds and cave formations to study ancient climate patterns. What they found was shocking. Between 800 and 1000 AD, the Maya region got hit by severe droughts. We're not talking about a few dry months. These droughts lasted for years, sometimes decades. Rainfall dropped by up to 40% in some areas. For a civilization that depended entirely on rain-fed agriculture, this was devastating. Their corn crops failed, water sources dried up, and food became scarce. But here's where it gets interesting. The drought didn't cause the collapse by itself. The Maya had survived droughts before, so why did this one break them? That brings us to the second factor, overpopulation. By 800 AD, the Maya southern lowlands were packed with people. Some estimates put the population at over 10 million people in an area roughly the size of Colorado. They had built cities everywhere, cleared massive amounts of forest, and pushed their agricultural system to the limit. When the drought hit, there were too many mouths to feed and not enough backup resources. The third factor was environmental damage. The Maya had cut down huge portions of the rainforest to make room for farms and cities. This caused soil erosion, reduced rainfall even more, and destroyed ecosystems they depended on. They were basically undermining their own survival without realizing it. Archaeological evidence shows layers of eroded soil covering former farmlands. The land couldn't support their population anymore. Now add the fourth factor, political instability. Maya city-states were constantly at war with each other. Kings competed for power, resources, and prestige. They spent enormous amounts of wealth on monuments, palaces, and military campaigns. When resources became scarce, these conflicts intensified. Wars became more brutal, trade networks broke down, and cooperation between cities collapsed. Evidence of violence increases dramatically in the archaeological record during this period. Mass graves, fortifications, and burned structures tell the story of societies tearing themselves apart. So here's what actually happened when you put all these factors together. The drought hit hard and crops started failing across the region. With too many people and damaged land, food shortages became critical. People started losing faith in their kings, who claimed to have divine power over rain and harvests. When the kings couldn't deliver, their authority crumbled. Wars broke out over remaining resources. Trade routes shut down, making the shortages even worse. Cities couldn't maintain their populations anymore. So people did what made sense. They left. They migrated to areas with better water sources, moved to smaller communities, or headed north to cities that were still functioning. This wasn't a mysterious disappearance. It was a rational response to impossible living conditions. The grand cities were abandoned, not because everyone died, but because staying there meant death. So what's the real story of the Maya collapse? It wasn't a sudden, mysterious event. It was a slow breakdown caused by climate stress, overpopulation, environmental damage, and political conflict. The Maya didn't vanish. Their political system collapsed, and people adapted by moving and reorganizing their society. Maya culture continued in other regions and survives to this day. The myth of the disappearing Maya says more about our love for mystery than about actual history. The real story is about how civilizations can push their environment too far and pay the price. And that's a lesson that hits different when you look at our world today. Climate change, overpopulation, environmental destruction. Sound familiar? The Maya collapse isn't just ancient history. It's a warning written in stone and buried in the jungle. If this changed how you see history, hit subscribe for more myth-busting content.